The Big Fella Weight Loss Podcast is the place for real, open and honest talk about weight loss and GLP1 medication. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode. Welcome everybody to the Big Fella Weight Loss Podcast. My name is Baz and I'm on a weight loss journey with Mounjaro. I've lost over 7 stone this year so far, and this is my place to share my thoughts on weight loss and my journey in particular. You can follow me over on TikTok at bigfella_Baz, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and drop me a review if you're liking what you hear so far. So welcome to episode 5 of this podcast. Last week we talked about the side effects of Mounjaro and GLP1 medication and how I've managed them so far. This week it's all about exercise, how I'm moving more, what's working for me, and why exercise is becoming a bigger part of my journey as time goes on. First of all though, as always, I like to talk about how the last weeks went for me, talk about what the results were on the scales, and any challenges I faced, any highs, any lows of the last week. And so, last week was always going to be a difficult one. I was working away from home. I worked away in Liverpool for several days. I then had to make a trip up to Newcastle for a family funeral. So I knew I was going to be away for a lot of the week, and I knew I'd be out of my routine. And with that, the challenge of eating out 3 times a day. And I'll talk a bit more about how that went in a moment. But first, the results. So I get weighed on a Monday morning. I jab on a Monday morning. And this week, I stepped on the scales and I'd maintained. So I stayed exactly the same. I am still 7 stone, 4 pounds down. In 30 weeks now, and that maintain was a brilliant result for me. I was absolutely delighted with that this week, and it'll become clear why shortly. So yeah, as I say, I did have a challenging week. I had to work quite hard over the weekend to sort of pull things back and undo some of the damage I might have done whilst I was away. And so I'll talk a little bit about how I did whilst away from home, and to be honest, it wasn't great. It certainly wasn't as bad as it would have been in the past, whilst I was not on Mounjaro and things like that. But I ate more. I drank more alcohol than I have done in quite some time. So yeah, buckle up for this tale of my week away, because writing the notes for this and sort of writing back and thinking back about what I'd ate and drank, I can't quite believe that I've come out of this week unscathed with a maintain. Now, part of why I've ate more and drank more might be down to the fact that I have been on the 7.5 milligram dose of Mounjaro now for 15 weeks. And I'll be honest, for the last couple of weeks, I've felt the effectiveness wasn't as good. And I'd been sort of on the cusp of making a move up in terms of my dose. So 15 weeks is a long time to stick on one dose. And I think the timing of my trip probably wasn't great. I think it would have been different had I have just moved to 7.5 and sort of been getting the effectiveness at a higher level, I would say, and then going away at that point would have been different. That's not an excuse. I could have been more disciplined, but anyway, we are where we are. So, away from home with work, travelled Monday to Liverpool. I was staying in Liverpool for 3 nights, so 3 nights in a hotel. One thing I did, I would say do well. Some people would say not so well. I skipped breakfast. Now, some people will say skipping breakfast is bad. For me, staying in a hotel, it would be a cooked breakfast every day. And that might be starting the day off with sort of 1,000 calories on the plate. So skipping that was a bonus for me. And it wasn't skipping a meal and suffering as a result. I was skipping breakfast really because I was having a big evening meal. And by the time I woke up the next morning, I just wasn't ready for breakfast. So as I say, evening meals were quite filling. So I arrived in Liverpool on Monday evening, and I went out for a nice 2-course meal with a colleague, which included a bottle of wine. It was a very tempting offer of 2 courses and a bottle of wine for around £30, and I was lured into it. I had a really nice meal. Starter was black pudding with a potato rosti and a poached egg on the top. That was really nice. And then I had pork belly with mash and vegetables, again, really nice. And the pork belly wasn't too bad. There was lots of vegetables on the plate and things like that. But overall, starter, main, and a bottle of red wine, I reckon we would have knocked off about 2,000 calories in that meal and ate far more food than I would ordinarily be eating on an evening. That day, I knew I was travelling that day, and I knew I was going to go out on the evening. So I did sort of plan around it a bit. I had my breakfast late. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, I had breakfast, and then I skipped lunch because I knew I'd be having that bigger meal. So there were little tweaks I made to make sure things didn't go completely off the rails. So that was day one. The next day, woke up, as I said, skipped breakfast, and went for lunch. Went to a Korean place and had some Korean fried chicken and rice. Now, I use ChatGPT occasionally to take a photo of my food, send it to ChatGPT and say, give me a guess at how many calories I've got here. ChatGPT estimated that around 850 calories, which is probably around double what my lunch would normally be. It was nice. I did enjoy it, but definitely more calories than usual. And that evening I went out for some Thai food. I'd gave up counting the calories by this point. But I had a nice meal, got back to my hotel and enjoyed another bottle of wine. So this is only Tuesday and I've ate out twice and I've had 2 bottles of wine. So not a great start to the week. Wednesday, I skipped breakfast again. I was still full from the evening meal. Lunch was okay on Wednesday. I went for a sandwich from a sandwich shop, freshly made, cooked meats, plenty of salad, no mayo or anything like that. So I reckon around 500 calories, perfectly manageable lunch. And then that evening, although I didn't go out for a meal, I did get a takeaway in. It was a Chinese, and I made some good choices, I think. I ordered a roast meats dish, so it was a chicken, pork, duck, all roasted meats on top of a load of boiled rice, and it had some pak choy. I got some satay skewers as well. So there's lots of protein and not lots of sauce or greasy stuff in there. Still would have been a lot more calories than normal. Certainly a lot more food than normal. But not too bad in terms of choices. However, there was another bottle of wild wine consumed. So 3 days in, 3 bottles of wine. Not great. Certainly not my usual routine. And then Thursday was my final day in Liverpool. I skipped breakfast once again. My lunch was a burrito, so not terrible, but it was quite a big burrito. And that done me for most of the day. I then had to travel back up to Newcastle. Spent Thursday evening in Newcastle. Newcastle United were playing Barcelona. Caught up with some friends for some beers. I had several gin and tonics on the train to Newcastle. They were diet tonics, so 60 calories a time, so not too bad. I got to Newcastle, had a couple of pints, and then I really didn't enjoy the beer. I'm struggling a bit with lager these days. The gassiness fills me up, and I didn't enjoy that much, so I moved back onto gins. But I did have quite a bit to drink on the Thursday evening. And by the time the night ended and I was heading back to my mother's where I was staying Thursday night, I'd only had my lunch. I'd still only had my burrito all day. So I did pick up a takeaway on the way home, but I did go for a grilled chicken kebab with salad, not chips. So again, not a bad choice, but the sort of routine and the diet and the meal plan, completely different last week to what it would normally be. By Friday, I knew I had to get right back on track. I weigh on a Monday. I weigh more frequently generally when I'm at home, but weigh day or tracking days is the Monday. So I thought, right, the last 4 days have been bad. Next 3 have to be good. So I was really right back on it, right back on track with the food from Friday onwards. I travelled back home to Nottingham where I live on the Friday evening. I got back on the scales on Saturday morning and I was 5 pounds up at that point. Not hugely surprised by that. But I know for me, if I put weight on quickly in a short period of time, I know it will drop quickly. So focused, Saturday, Sunday was going to be really, really good. Back swimming, back on the treadmill. I cooked a big pan of soup, so I had nice, healthy, low-calorie lunches with plenty of fibre, plenty of protein. And had a really, really solid weekend. Lots of walking and did everything I could. So by Monday, to get on the scales, here we are, maintained. Really, really happy with that. So there are some positives from last week. I didn't gain. I very quickly got on plan once back home, because in the past for me, having a few days like I did, that could lead to weeks and weeks of spiraling out of control. But I'm right back on track now, and hopefully the weight will start coming off again. The negatives, I don't really want to be too harsh on myself, but my discipline was less than it could have been. I think some of that was down to the fact that the dose was becoming less effective for me. But it was a unique week. It's not very often I work away. I'm eating out every night with colleagues. And at the end of the day, I enjoyed what I ate. I had good food. I certainly made better choices than I might have done otherwise. And I think overall, I could have done better. I could have ate better. But it's not the end of the world. It's 1 week to maintain. I will take that. I think the biggest reflection for me from last week was how easy I found it to eat quite a lot last week, because I think there'd been other points on this journey where there's no way I could have ate as much as I did, and that fed into a little bit my decision to go up a dose. Now, not purely a reaction to last week, because as I say, last week was unique in my routine, but I think a feeling I've had over a couple of weeks was that the 7.5 was just less effective for me at the moment. And to be fair, as I say, I've been on it for 15 weeks, so that's not hugely unexpected that it would start wearing off. So this week I have moved up to 10 milligrams. Early days, I only jabbed on Monday, but I can safely say I can tell it's working again for various reasons. I feel it's definitely kicked back in. And I'll talk a bit more about that next week when we get a full week down the line, and I'll let you know how my first week on 10 milligrams has gone. So that was it. That was week 30. A maintain. A very good maintain given the circumstances. And we push on with week 31. Really, really focused this week. Well planned. I've got good plans for exercise and things like that. Determined to get a good week. So, yeah, tune in next week to find out how that goes. Hopefully we'll push towards the 7.5 stone mark. But anyway, now on to this week's subject, which, as I said at the start, is about exercise. And exercise whilst losing weight or whilst on a Mounjaro journey. So, at the start of my journey, I was unfit. I was lacking energy. And to be honest, I was very lazy. I'd do anything to avoid exercise. I had sore knees, sore ankles, walking up the stairs was tiring. A shocking state to be in, really. Now, I've mentioned before that I've lost lots of weight in the past, mostly with diets, varying different diets, but sometimes with exercise involved. And the exercise has certainly helped in the past. I do think exercise mixed with diet is the best combination for me. The exercise helps me stay disciplined on the diet, because I think it's pointless going to the gym for an hour and then undoing it by eating poor food. Now, what I didn't want to do this time was try and do too much too soon. So I wasn't going to start this diet and think, right, I'm going to go straight down the gym and I'm going to start doing boot camps and all of this lot, because I started this journey at around 30 stone. Whatever I did had to be manageable and sustainable. So I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew at the start. And what I did focus on was just moving more. I was starting from a very low starting point. So moving more didn't mean moving a lot. I looked at my fitness app on my phone before doing this podcast. And if I looked at my average daily steps in January, so prior to Mounjaro, my average steps was around 2,500 steps a day. Not a lot at all. I started Mounjaro in February, and by March, my average steps were pushing 5,000 per day. So I doubled it in a very short space of time with very little effort required to just get out there and walk a little bit more. By May, my steps were up to around 6,500 per day. And by June, I was hitting 8,000 per day, and I've sort of sustained it around that level, sometimes a little bit higher. But in just 4 months, I'd gone from 2,500 steps to 8,000 steps in a day. And I'll be honest, it hadn't felt like a massive challenge. It hadn't felt like I had to work really, really hard at that. I just had to have the motivation to just do some steps, just walk a little bit more. Now, that 5,000 extra steps per day that I'm doing now works out 150,000 steps in a month. And now I asked ChatGPT to work out what this meant in terms of calories for me. And ChatGPT estimated that these 150,000 extra steps each month that I'm now doing were worth at least 10,000 calories burned for me based on my weight. That equates to an extra £3 a month of weight loss just from walking a little bit more. No strenuous workouts, no massive commitment, just walking a little bit more. So I think that shows that little improvements can make a big difference, because if I'm losing £3 a month from walking in the last 6 months, that's £18. That's nearly 20% of my total weight loss just from that additional walking and adding in those more steps each day without a massive commitment. So that was where I started. I invested in a treadmill. That meant even if the weather was miserable or I wasn't out and about and I didn't have much going on a particular day, I could jump on the treadmill in the morning for 30 minutes. I could jump on it again 30 minutes in the evening, listen to some music, watch something on TV. But it would work out. I would get those 5,000 extra steps in quite easily just with that 1 hour on the treadmill each day. So there was always that option. And so that's how my exercise regime started whilst on this weight loss journey. Nice, easy, manageable increases in movement. That was all I looked at. And so fast forward to where I am now. And things have changed quite a bit. With 7 stone lost, suddenly I've got more energy. I move more easily. I'm less uncomfortable when I'm moving around. And so I can challenge myself a bit more. So I have introduced quite a variety of different exercise now. But this only came in sort of quite recently. So I now swim. I now use the gym. I use the treadmill, not just for walking, but occasionally a little bit of running. And I've got a good variety in there. And I think that's been key for me, is having a variety of different exercise options. Because people say it to me in the past, if you're going to do exercise, find something you enjoy. Now, I'll be honest with you. I can't hand on heart sit here and say I enjoy any particular exercise. I enjoy the feeling afterwards. I enjoy the positive impact it has on both my physical and mental health. But do I enjoy plodding on the treadmill as I'm dragging myself along? Not particularly. So enjoyment of exercise, I don't know. I struggle with linking those two things together. And that's why variety works for me. I can do swimming one day. I can get on the exercise bike another. It might be weights, it might be the treadmill. And I find mixing it up helps. It breaks the monotony. I think if I said I was going to jump on a treadmill every day, I know I'd get bored and it wouldn't be sustainable for me. So I need to mix it up and change it around. So it was probably about 5 months in for me and about 6 stone gone before I started to introduce the exercise. And swimming was the starting point. I'd not swam for 20 years properly, other than plodding around in a pool on holiday. But I took that first step, I got in the pool, and I surprised myself at how much I could do. It wasn't pretty, I wouldn't win any awards for style, but I was burning calories, I was dragging myself from one end of the pool to the other. And actually, in a very short space of time, my technique has improved. I've started to focus more on the legs, I've started focusing more on my breathing, and suddenly everything becomes easier, and I'm swimming better for longer. So the swimming's been a really good one for me. I use my fitness tracker so I can see how much I swam on my first session and see how much I'm doing now. And the difference is quite significant. I'm swimming faster, I'm swimming for longer, I'm taking less breaks. And as I say, I've noticed quite a big difference in my stamina levels on that front. After a few weeks of the swimming, I started popping into the gym because the gym is in the same place. So I would swim and then I would pop in the gym and I'd do a little bit of weight training. It might be 10 or 15 minutes, but it might burn me another 200 calories. So it was all just a little bit of adding onto the exercise I was doing. And then I started to use the bike a bit more. So now sometimes I'll go to the swimming pool. I'll do 40 minutes swimming where I might burn 400 calories. And then I'll go into the gym and I'll jump on the bike and I'll do 30, 40 minutes on the bike and I might burn another 500 calories. So in the space of an hour and a half, I'm pushing sort of 900 calories burned, which is a big chunk for me. And as I say, I'm not going to sit here and say I really enjoy sitting on that exercise bike or I'm really enjoying the swimming. But I do enjoy how it makes me feel. And I do feel quite proud of what I'm able to do now and how far I've come in terms of the exercise. And so I do have that determination now to keep it up, to keep building it up. Not because I enjoy it necessarily. I don't hate it. I should point that out. But for the benefits it brings and for how it's helping keep the momentum up in terms of the weight loss. And the increased fitness levels and the energy levels that have come from doing the extra exercise means I'm no longer as lazy. And so there are other things that come into my daily life in terms of exercise that are sort of subconscious, where I could go into a building and I need to be on the first floor and I'll walk up the stairs rather than go for the lift without even thinking about it, because it's only one floor. I would think, just take the stairs. In the past, I would definitely have took the lift. I might have a journey where it's a 10-15 minute walk and I'll think nothing of just getting on the road and walking that 15 minutes, where before I might have went and hopped on the bus and took the bus a couple of stops. So little things that come from having those increased fitness levels and the increased energy means that I am doing more generally as well. So it all adds up in the end. The most recent addition to my exercise regime has been the start of the Couch to 5K program. I'm doing this on a treadmill in the house, so nobody has to see me dragging myself around the streets. But it's early days. But I'm burning 400 calories a time doing 30 minutes Couch to 5K session. A little bit of walking, a little bit of running. I'm almost finished week 2 at the moment. And so, yeah, making progress there. And again, it's another sort of goal and more achievements each time I finish one of those runs. I do feel good about what I've achieved, even if I don't feel great in terms of how hard work it is. But yeah, Couch to 5K, going well so far. I'm not sure I'll get through it in the 6 weeks it's supposed to take. I'm fairly certain I will have to repeat a couple of weeks. So that gives a bit of an idea as to how my exercise is going and how I've sort of built on it over 6 months. And so I thought about what my tips would be to anyone who was just starting out on a weight loss journey and wanted to sort of bring exercise into it. And I think the key thing for me is to start small and build it gradually. Don't take on too much too soon, because it's going to make it hard to sustain. It's going to make it feel like a real chore, and that's not going to help. For me, it was diet first, get the food right, and then as the weight drops, start to build things, because it becomes easier as the weight drops. But definitely set challenges at the low end. Don't set out, if you're like me, you're starting at 30 stone and you suddenly say, right, I'm going to walk 12,000 steps every day. Is that going to be achievable to go from 2,500 to 12,000? So I focused on 5 and then 6 and then 7 and built it up very, very slowly like that. A fitness tracker has been really good for me. I found that to be a real positive. I can track absolutely everything I do. If I haven't got my steps in for a day, I can go out and have a little walk. It doesn't need to be a massive effort. I might just need to go out and get an extra 2,000 steps in, and a 20-minute walk will sort that out. But even when I go to the pool or the gym, I track every session I do, and it's great to get to the end and think, wow, I've burned 400 calories there, or I've burned 500 calories there. Seeing those calorie numbers can be a big motivator, so that's worked well for me. If you can find something you enjoy, go with that rather than force yourself to do something you hate. As I say, I don't hate any of the exercise I'm doing. I don't particularly enjoy it. Maybe that will change in future, who knows, as it gets easier. The other things, don't compare yourself to others. Your journey is your journey. It's easy to have this fear of walking into the gym and thinking you'll be out of your depth against other people and all of this lot. You're not competing against anybody. I did dread going into the gym. I dreaded going to the swimming pool. But actually, once you get in there, you quickly realise nobody's paying any attention to what you're doing. Everyone's in their own little world with their own little goals, and nobody blinks an eye at the fact this big fat bloke's in the corner trying to drag himself along on a treadmill. So yeah, crack on. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks, and do your own thing. The other good thing with the exercise is it gives you some success that you can measure that isn't purely weight related. So rather than all of your success being related to how much weight have I lost, things like running for longer, swimming further, these are all little victories that can give you a bit of a boost. I didn't lose any weight this week, but I ran for 2 minutes the other day on a treadmill non-stop. 2 minutes non-stop doesn't sound like a lot to some people, but to me, that was an achievement. I couldn't have done that 6 months ago. I can now. So that was a little sort of victory where the scales weren't, I didn't get the results on the scales this week, but I can look at other things and say that's an achievement this week. And so I had a little sort of look ahead and think about where I see myself in terms of exercise 6 months from now. And I will continue to build it. I've got goals now that are fitness related. So the Couch to 5K is one that's got natural goals built in because of this progression there. The swimming, I've got a goal. I need to be able to swim to a certain level because next year I'm going to Egypt and I'd like to go scuba diving. I'd like to do the scuba diving qualification, and for that there's a certain level of swimming and fitness that needs to be achieved. And to be fair, I'm not far off that level already. The swimming I've been doing has really pushed me towards that, so there are goals there. I'd also like to be walking more next year. I do like the idea of hill walking and taking in some nice scenic walks, things that are more challenging that I would take on at the moment. Something I've probably wanted to do for years, but had the fear that I would struggle. So definitely some more challenging walks in the future would be a target for me as well, and get out and see some nice parts of the country with some nice scenic but challenging walks. So those are some of the goals I have. In terms of my exercise, and I'm sure I'll get there, it will get easier as the weight continues to drop off. But I think my main takeaway from this and thinking about exercise and from the last 6 months and my journey with exercise is that it isn't all about the weight loss. It helps with the weight loss. Absolutely. The calories burnt is going to help your weight loss. But actually, the exercise for me is as much about the mental benefits. It's been a tool for me to feel better about myself rather than just about losing weight. I feel a lot better and positive about things when I do that exercise. And so I'll keep it up and I'll keep building it up, but building it up slowly rather than taking massive big steps. And so that wraps up this week's episode. Exercise covered this week, and I hope you found some of that useful or at least interesting. If you've made it this far, then well done. Thank you very much for listening. Once again, if you are enjoying the podcast, do continue to support it by subscribing wherever it is you're listening to your podcast. Drop a review if you're that way inclined. A 5-star would be nice, but whatever you feel is necessary. Recommend it to people who might be interested, or sharing any of my social media posts will help us build this up. I said on the very first episode, as things build, we will look at other options, like possibly putting it on YouTube as a video as well as a podcast, and that way we can start sort of streaming it live where people can get involved and sort of take part a bit more. But yeah, we need to build it up to get to that stage where we consider that. But for the moment, I appreciate you all listening. It is growing, that I can see every week people are downloading it and listening to it. I know I'm not listening. I sat here talking to myself all the time. But yeah, do keep supporting. It is appreciated. But for now, I will be back next week. But until then, have a good week, everyone. Cheers.